Then I will call a meeting of the First Nations Relations Committee for Wednesday, May 26, 2021 to order. And our first item of business is adoption of the public agenda.
Move adoption.
Thank you. Seconder?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Additions or deletions? Seeing none, call a question. Any opposed? Hearing none, call a motion pass. Petitions and delegations, none. Adoption of the previous meeting minutes.
Move adoption.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. So, is there anyone opposed? Hearing none, call that motion passed. Business arising? We have one item, which is the terms of reference for the First Nations Relations Committee.
Mr. Chairman, perhaps I could just give a bit of
That would be nice. Thank you, Tom.
text. So at the last meeting of the committee, there was a request, or at least discussion, to have the terms of reference for the committee on each agenda. We are currently working to have that, and I'm just going to scroll up so you can see what I'm talking about. Have that attached up at the top here of the page and a standard feature, but that is still something that is being worked on and was not ready for today. So we've just stuck that under business arising for now. But hopefully for the next meeting, you'll see it up at the top of the agenda page.
All righty. So on receipt of, what's your official title? Chief Admin? No. What is your official title, Tom?
Corporate Services Manager is fine.
Okay, so it would be receipt of the verbal Corporate Services Manager's report.
Move receipt.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion?
I had one question. There was, it seems to me there was an issue around no electoral area representation on this committee.
Right.
I don't see anything regarding that here. Are we going to, well, it's already in the terms of reference, so I'm just curious how we're going to proceed regarding that.
Okay, now my understanding was that we had made a motion to take it to the board. The board needs to address the lack of representation by municipal service or electoral services directors.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And I do think that went to the board, didn't it, Tom? I'm pretty certain. No, not yet.
It did. The question was just briefly discussed, and I believe the response was that the board chair had made recommendations for membership for this year. The board accepted them. If the board wishes to make changes, then the board can always do that, of course. But to date, there's nothing remiss in terms of the appointments that have been made. They were done in accordance with the chair's authority to make those recommendations to the board, and the board accepted them. So, but again, if there's a desire to make changes, then that's always an option for the board to look at.
Go ahead, Director Davis.
Yeah, I have a related question. Just in terms of the director's portal, could we have the members of committees on there, like listed? Because I didn't see anything regarding that. I was just looking today to remind myself of who actually is on this committee. Like right now, I'm only like seeing 3 or 4 of us. So it'd be interesting to know who is supposed to be on the committee. Like right now, we do not have any electoral area representatives, correct?
That's correct.
And yet it's in the terms of reference, so maybe I've missed something here, but it seems to me we should be seeking representation from the electoral areas.
Well, I think you're partially correct there, but it doesn't say it must have an EA director.
Mhm.
So I think the appointments are in line with the terms of reference. If the committee or the board wanted to specifically change certain things to ensure that, they obviously have that authority to do that. But at this point, the board so far has chosen not to do that, stick with the current terms of reference, which the committee and the chair has appointed in line with those terms. Your other point, though, about the director's portal, Rivers, I know, is on the call here, and Renee and Elaine, and we'll make sure that's taken care of.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe I should just add the regional district has just gone to a new website, and it could be that that information was somehow did not transition over. So we'll make sure that should be on the public website as well.
Okay, great. I was accessing through the public website, I believe so.
Okay, anybody got anything further? Your hand, oh, thank you, Martin. I just wanted to speak to the first issue, and that's, I mean, it is, if it doesn't exactly say that there has to be, I think that it's definitely implied when it says that not more than 5 directors representing a cross-section of municipal, electoral area, small community, and large community interests on the board. So I think if that isn't direct enough, then maybe we do need to get the board to change the terms of reference. And I guess I look back to a few weeks ago when we had a discussion on the issue around add to reserves. And it had been referred to the municipal or the electoral areas committee as well as to the First Nations Relations Committee. And what came out was when an add to reserve happens outside of municipal boundaries, it's inside an electoral areas directors. Now we're very clear on what role we have to play when it's inside municipal boundaries. But I think when is it a whole board's function to deal with that add to reserve, and when is it a municipal services director? And because we're talking about setting up ground rules for improving First Nations relations, should we be defining the role of the municipal or electoral area directors?
So, Mr. Chairman, I will just remind the committee that there is a director from the board to develop a policy on dealing with addition to reserve applications, and that will be forthcoming fairly soon. So a lot of those questions, I think, would be appropriate for debate, perhaps when the committee looks at that policy.
Okay.
Who's preparing it, Tom?
Staff are preparing the policy for the board at the board's direction. Anticipate that will be ready for review sometime in June.
Okay, my concern is that without an electoral area representative on our committee, then we're viewing it through one lens. And yeah, oh well, maybe it needs to wait until the policy, but I'll leave that up to the rest of the committee.
If I could speak, Chair, I was just going to say, I guess we're open to a challenge from one of the electoral area directors in terms of joining this committee, should they choose to challenge this under our terms of reference.
Okay. Director Kerr?
Thank you, Chair. I agree with you on the fact that we're just looking at it through maybe not one lens. Right now, the committee is looking through a couple lenses, but we are definitely not seeing it through electoral lens, and we're constantly reminded at our meetings that that we don't do that. So I think it would this committee in particular is of importance to all of them, and I think it'd be very important to have a representative on it. So whatever we can do to make that happen from a committee level, I definitely support.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any further discussion? Well, just from my own perspective, I agree with Director Kerr and Director Davis. I think it's important that we have electoral area committee representation. It feels awkward right at the moment because the big issue when this committee was set up was that we weren't a doing committee, rather we were one that would provide advice and guidance for the entire board on how to improve First Nations relations and what was required. And we are keep being reminded, especially when the board refers specific items to us, like the add to reserve on Cortez. So what is our role in reviewing items referred by the board? So I put that out to general discussion and look to our CAO. Let's have a little discussion on it.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. If you know, we want to propose a motion, I think that's appropriate. You know, I anticipated there would be more discussion at the last board meeting when it was brought up, but it seemed to kind of slide under the radar there. Excuse me. So you know, if it's the intent to reinvigorate that discussion, I think a motion would be appropriate.
Yeah. We did at the last meeting adjust the representation to include First Nations, correct? Our treaty, Cayuga-Checklasset First Nation. And I believe Kevin Jules is on this committee.
Yeah, Kevin's on this committee, yeah.
Right, so it was changed to represent that, and I think that was what was looked at rather than the, and so the board focused on adding First Nations as opposed to the other part of the motion, which was where we didn't have representation from electoral areas. Director Davis?
Yeah, along those lines, I would like to move that we invite a member of the an electoral area director to step forward to be represented as a director on this board.
Okay. Before I do that, I'm not sure that we can. I think we would have to make a recommendation to the board and or to the chair of the board. And maybe Mr. Leach or Mr. Yates could clarify.
That would be correct. If the committee wishes to make a recommendation to the board along those lines, that's perfectly fine. The committee would not be able, of course, to independently of the board, you know, take on a task of that nature.
Okay. Director.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Oh, if you're not finished, carry on, Martin. But I've got Director with his hand up.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Okay, Director Kerr.
Thank you, Chair. I think that it, as staff has said, it is the chair that makes the appointments. And I think it's totally within his purview to to do it or to not do it. I suppose with instruction from the full board, but I think maybe that may be maybe if we just made a motion directing the chair or pardon? Am I getting a feedback loop here?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, it's not from my end because I haven't changed anything, but yeah, maybe just a motion asking the chair to look at it would be more appropriate.
Okay. And there's, if I can, just to keep it going a little bit, it also says that there's not more than 5 directors. And correct me if I'm wrong, we didn't increase that to 6 when we added the Cayuga checklist. So would put us over. In other words, and how would we address that? In other words, would we eliminate 1 current member? Or would we ask that the numbers be increased?
So, Mr. Chairman, if I could, just to clarify, I believe the committee may be thinking about changes that were made recently to the Municipal Services Committee. There were changes made there to clarify that First Nation directors would be on that committee because they are equivalent to municipal directors under statute. I
Right.
don't know there have been recent changes made to the First Nations Relation Committee terms of reference. I would have to check on that.
Okay.
So just by way of background,
Would be,
the representative from Cayuga-Chesapeake has for quite some time been a non-voting member of this committee.
right,
And I believe now that has changed. They would be considered a voting member. I would have to check.
right. So is there any further discussion on this item?
Yes, Chair. I note that there apparently is 3 members from the city of Campbell River on the board right now. If numbers are an issue, maybe it'd be possible to respectfully ask one of the members to step aside in order to make way for an electoral director to be on this committee. Because it seems like the city of Campbell River is overrepresented on this, considering that we have other villages and electoral areas not represented at all. So if we want to see more balance, we need to rebalance it. We could discuss making it much larger, but I don't know if that's necessary for the amount of work that we're doing here.
Okay, through to staff. Who are the members that we currently have? My recollection of we have Director Colburn from Zabalas, Director Davis from Gold River, Director Kerr,
Passes.
Cornfield, and Moglove.
That is correct, and Director Cornfield, and I think that is the 5-member lineup currently.
And Jewel.
And Director Jules.
Right, so that would put us at 6, right? With Director Jules.
Right. So clearly, I think there's a need to clarify, because looking at these terms of reference, it doesn't seem to me that First Nations representatives on the board will automatically sit on this committee, even though they have been. So that
Right.
might be something that is worth clarifying as well.
So perhaps we could get a report from staff on your recommendations to changes that would be required under 3.1 to bring it up to speed.
I'll move that.
Second.
Thank you. Staff comments, Mr. Leach?
Nope.
What do you mean, no?
Well, do you want to make a motion? We're happy to entertain a motion.
Well, no, I wasn't trying to put you on a seat or a hot seat that way. Is there a better way to do it?
No, that's, I mean,
Okay.
motions or?
Well, no, but I mean, if we're going to recommend, I don't like to put things off for more reports from staff if we don't need to.
No, that's an easy one. Yeah, I agree with your earlier statement. I think that we kind of had a 2-for-1 last board meeting, and they focused on the additions, the first edition that we had on there, and kind of didn't have much discussion in terms of representation. So it won't be difficult for us to prepare a report on this.
Okay. So on the motion, is there anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Unfortunately, there's only the three of us here today. Correct?
I think Kermit's on, is he not?
No.
That is correct, as well, Director Colburn, I believe.
Yep.
And Jules is here
Good morning,
too.
everyone.
Okay,
Yeah.
I don't have a list of everybody, so.
My name
If
comes
you-
up as Kevin Cools. I think I've accidentally put a
But
K
is that
instead of an
Kevin?
A.
Was that Kevin the Cool?
Yeah,
Kevin Cool. Okay.
yes,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it does come up as Kevin Cools. KK.
yes.
Okay, well, everybody has heard the motion. I'm not hearing any in opposition. So we'll declare the motion carried. And move on to staff reports. The goals for 2021.
I'll move receipt. I can't use the chat function today, so if Rivers would stay on with me after, that would be amazing. Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you for the receipt motion. Director Colburn, and yeah, this is not a big committee, so it's not a problem if people just use their hands up function when they want to speak. That seems to show through for me. Okay, is there a seconder?
Second.
Thank you. So any discussion on item HA?
If you would like, Mr. Chair, Tino can speak to this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Dave. Good morning. So the First Nation Relations Committee was established to build relationships with all the First Nations located in the SRD. Goals to advance this valuable work were identified in 2018. Timelines were revised in March 2021 and attached for your reference. So the goals for 2021 were divided into 3 phases. Phase 1 was building a base knowledge. All the items with the target completion date of April 28th have been completed. And that is a document that's named SRD Contact and Governance Information, and it contains all First Nations in the SRD, their treaty status if they have one, what governance structure and when and if changes are made by elections, chief, council, CIO information. Then there's another document named FNRC Corporate History, and this document has an updated listing of historical content from April 2016 to April 2021 for committee to review. And these documents can be found on the Directors portal in the First Nations resource under the SRD First Nations related documents. Also on the Directors portal, First Nations resource, there is nations located within SRD, and that information that is there has been updated, and it contains their location, population, treaty status, primary contact information, and their current chief. Phase 2 is building foundations for good relations. Protocols and examples by other communities is an activity in this goal. And territorial acknowledgement is a protocol that is commonly used by local governments, organizations, other agencies, and is seen as a critical component of reconciliation. This committee could consider the development of a territorial acknowledgement for use at meetings and events. And I've done research and I have experience with territorial acknowledgements. An acknowledgement that supports a virtual and in-person meetings and is appropriate to use within regional district could be developed for further consideration and feedback if so desired. There's been increased engagement with the Connected Coast project, with discussions on ATRs and general information sharing that has taken place with the local First Nations in the SRD. Communication protocol with First Nations currently under development and will be shared in draft form in the future. In phase 3, there's building resources. That is, the target completion date is later in the year, so there's not much to report on at this time. So if you have any comments or questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, thanks, Tina.
No problem.
Questions from the committee? Director Colburn.
Good morning. Through the chair to Tina, I'm just wondering, so those are documents that are available on the director's web portal. Are we, do the municipalities and I guess the electoral area management and CAO would be here at the SRD level, but do the municipalities have access to those, or can we share them? I'm just wondering about, the first and the third document that you mentioned about, who they are, what the members of council are, that it's, I think that's a fantastic way to keep things updated.
Mr. Chairman, I can perhaps answer. The director's portal is a secure site intended strictly for directors. So it's not available for the public as a whole to access. Just so we're clear, that is the nature and the design of that particular site, the director's portal.
And all the directors have access to it.
So I'm just wondering about the process for sharing any info like that that's on there that would be public, but also would be more easily available maybe through this process. So that was all. Just wondering about process.
Okay. Staff?
I'm uncertain about the question there. Is Director Colburn saying that if she has information to have it uploaded, or
I think she was looking at making the information available to, say, every council member on her municipal council.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay. Okay, I have to think about that.
Okay.
Alternatively, just the CAO, or if I could find the information on that portal, write it down, share that just for ease of finding items like that, because as you say, it's updated regularly, and that's just a handy thing to have when you are engaging with people. It's nice to know the players in the game.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we're happy. I mean, we're always trying to encourage the directors to use and access the portal. That's where we're trying to feed all the information to. So you absolutely have access to it, and I just have to give it some thought. I don't know if there's any, in camera or stuff that can't be shared on there. It was meant to be, a resource for directors, and and not accessible to the public, but not for that reason, that there's a bunch of confidential information in there. But just off the top of my head, leave that with us, and we'll have a chat about making that information accessible to the other municipal councillors, if you will. But by all means, excuse me, use the site as a resource and share that information. It's not meant to be, you know, confidential. It's meant to be a resource for you.
One of the things that, and Tina, did you want to add anything?
No, thank you. I'm done.
Okay. One of the concerns I would have is releasing information, especially about the individual band counselors or chiefs or contact information without them acknowledging that ahead of time. I don't know whether there's contact phone numbers that may be personal on their list. So would it not require us to get sort of approval with them that here's why we want the information, here's what we're going to be using it for?
Mr. Chairman, that is, you know, that is one of our concerns, is that there might be sensitive information there, and it's not, like you say, necessarily confidential, but intended at this point for directors on the board only. And so, as the CEO has mentioned, I think it is worthy of looking at this in a little more detail before providing, you know, a solution to the issue.
Right. Okay, Director Colburn.
And really, I just appreciate the conversation around it, and having the information to us is absolutely fine. There's no push to make it public or anything like that. I just thought it was a good conversation to have about how we can use this and what that looks like. So thanks for the info.
Okay. Anything further on Tina's report? And I just have a couple of questions. Tina, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Do we have a map of each territory? Is that on the page?
It is.
Okay. Territorial acknowledgement, in the past, we haven't done it because of the fact that we cover so many different nations and so many different territories. So are we looking at a generic acknowledgement that could be used over the full range? Or are we looking at ones that, depending on where you're located?
These are on, these would be done. So if you're at a meeting on their territory, if you're on a meeting in their overlapping territory, on treaty settlement lands, or virtual, and normally it is based on where you are actually sitting. So right now, I would say we like hum, but if I was at home in Comox, I would acknowledge that I was sitting in Comox territory. So it's the location of where you're at.
Okay.
But if there's different protocols as well, not as a land acknowledgement, but say for correspondence, you could have saying the SRD is located in the Kwakwakiwak, New Channel, and Coast Salish territory.
Right.
But if you're doing a verbal land acknowledgement, you would want to be more specific.
Okay. And is that clarified in along that base knowledge?
Correct.
Or the building foundations section on
Yes.
territorial acknowledgements?
Yes, it is.
Okay, good. Thank you. And if there's nothing further, do we have a motion on receipt there, Tom?
You have a motion to receive that's on the floor and not yet voted on.
Okay, so is there any further discussion, Martin?
Just one question. I'm not completely up to date on this. Do we have any territorial disputes? And if so, how do we deal with that?
Good question. Staff?
I will have to default to Tina. I'm not aware.
As of, I don't know of any territorial disputes. I know that it is, each nation does have their specific core territory, and a part of, before you go do your land acknowledgement, part of that is doing your due diligence and ensuring that your information is correct as well. And I would always be a resource to be able to help with that information, to make sure that the information or the wording that is used is correct.
Okay. Good
Thank you.
enough, Dr. Davis?
Yeah.
Okay. The only ones I can think of, Tina, offhand is Weewakai and Weewakam. They have had their differences. And then when we throw in Comox First Nations, whose territory this was prior to 1850, yeah, there seems to be those things. So I think it was a good question, but if we have concerns, and then that's when we would contact you.
Correct.
Okay. And you're comfortable with that, Mr. Leach?
Yes.
Good. So it'll all go into our policies and things like that and how to deal with it?
Correct.
Absolutely.
Okay. So if there's nothing further on the question, is there anyone opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. And thank you, Tina, for the report.
Thank you.
And Mr. Leach, of course, and all the staff for all the work you guys do. So, item I, correspondence, transit feasibility study. Oops, sorry.
Chair, I think there's an item B under the
Yep,
staff.
sorry, I missed it, Tom. I would, we have item B. Report on First Nations territorial acknowledgement.
Move B.
Thank you. Seconder? We have a seconder.
Second.
Thank you. So, any discussion? Seeing no, call a question. Is there anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. On to item I, transit feasibility study.
Move receipt.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, call a question on receipt. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Any directors have anything to report? No new business, no addendum items, no closed session. Item N.
Move termination.
Second.
Who seconded? Director Colburn?
Director Colburn, second, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. We're terminated. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.